Good day, sir. This is Group 5, in which we will present our topic human trafficking and human rights in migration. First and foremost, we would like to state that this is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Rodan Ardinas, to use this as an educational material. Here are the presenters: Decadet Arica Miguelito, Decadet De La Torre Mark Steve, Decadet Manyakap Matthew Alvarez, Decadet De La Serna Nick Bryle, Decadet Dalanon Reno Nico, Decadet Racaza Reynald, Decadet Dagong Damrudel, Decadet Distora Anjo, and Decadet La Pasa James Anthony. I am Decadet Arica Miguelito. Our topic is human trafficking and human rights in migration. Our objective is to first explain what is human trafficking, to know what are the examples of human trafficking, to avoid the elements of human trafficking, and lastly, to know the current state of human trafficking in the Philippines. Our key messages: human trafficking may be closer to us than we think. Some of the goods we consume may have been the product of victims of trafficking. Smuggled migrants have human rights which must be respected, including the rights to be treated with dignity and right to personal safety. It is not only important to raise awareness about human trafficking and migrant smuggling, but also to address the root causes of social vulnerabilities such as poverty, conflict, and to uphold human rights. So the topic that was assigned to me is, what is human trafficking? Human trafficking, sometimes known as modern day slavery, is a multi-billion dollar form of international organized crime. Nothing more than commodity. Victims of human trafficking are essentially a commodity of criminals to utilize and even sell for financial advantage. Human dignity and rights are completely disregarded. So, human trafficking it is a large issue dealt with by countries all over the world, including our country, Philippines. It is a tier one country that is actively changing their methods of the battle against it. For example, one instance of this took place in 2003, where the country passed the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act, a law declaring human trafficking, child prostitution, sex tourism, sex slavery illegal. The law also helped to set up the foundation of what human trafficking prosecution in the Philippines has to become. Human trafficking first started during the 15th century in Africa. At the start of the European slave trade, when the Portuguese were transporting people from Africa to Portugal and using them as slaves. After the British joined 1562, the slave trade developed, and by 1600s, other countries such as North America, France, Holland, Spain, Denmark were a part of it as well. Nowadays, human trafficking is larger, consisting of an estimated 40.3 million victims, and more prevalent in North Korea, Russia, Iran, and China. In contrast, but also similarly to the slave trade in Europe, a majority of human trafficking victims are either black or African American, white, Caucasian, or Hispanic. But however, a vast majority are black African American. Victims are many times found to be females or far rather than males, and children or teenagers instead of adults, most likely due to young equability. That's all. So the next topic are the examples of human trafficking. First one is the sex trafficking, the second one is the forced labor, and the last one is the debt bondage.
Good evening, I am Mark Stephen De La Torre, and this is my report about sex trafficking. What is really sex trafficking? When we say sex trafficking, ito yung persahang makikipagtalik sa babae at sa bata below 18 years old. It also become a growing problem, especially in the United States, wherein 80% on the women or children are being involved to this. We all know that most of the victims here are the women's. Though meron din naman sa lalaki but minimal lang. Dahil alam nila na pag sinabing woman, ito ay mahina and not having enough strength para paglaban ng kanilang sarili. That's why we already have a law that in line to protect these victims, especially the children that under 18 years old and below. As a human, we have the right for this. Kasi kung hindi natin ito ipaglaban, they will downgrade the victims. Mag-iiba yung paningin nila sa iyo. They will discriminate you for what happened. And lastly, the self-esteem of the victim will also affected. Not just in the US but also in the other country. Napapanood ko lang ito sa news and other platforms that some parents is pinupush nila yung kanilang anak for that guy para makikipagtalik for them to have money, and it's not good kasi it will cause trauma sa bata. And if you are good parents or guardian, you will not do that to sa anak mo. Example of sex trafficking. 2 women in Korea are brought into San Francisco under the pretense that they will receive jobs as a hostesses or a waitress. When they arrive, they held captive and forced into prostitution, while captors control the money they receive. So mostly talaga yung iba is recruited siya, like sasabihin sa iyo na maganda yung trabaho doon, then pagdating mo sa place is prostitute pala ang trabaho. This is mostly the scenario that we've already seen on the television. For the conclusion to this, we need to be mindful to know our right as a human and your right as a woman. Lastly, hindi dapat tayo masilaw sa pera at hindi natin dapat gamitin ang ating anak para sa ganyang bagay kasi hindi sila mga laruan. That's all. Thank you.
So for tonight I will discuss about the forced labor. So what is forced labor? It is any works of service which people are forced to do against their will under threat of punishment. So kung the word punishment to, so nahog ni siya punishment na to. So example kita mga Pilipino, mutumanon mo kita kay lagi adlock sa tangang makuan, so mutuman lang ta. So Mostly our slavery practice contains some elements of the forced labor. So, agriculture, kapoy yun nga trabaho. Imagine no day off sa lain nasod, no day off or no rest. So makatuog mo gani tag 2 ka oras o 3 so sa kadlaw. So mao na ila din to. For example, agriculture and fishing, domestic work, somewhat domestic work. This is very risky. Kung madto gawas ubang Pilipino madto na gawas kay because diri tasig standard ilang trabaho diri dapat nadud kay kanang degree ilang kwaon ngitag experience. Mostly sa Pilipino wabigid gradong uban, so mao na lang tungod sa kalisod mo lang yun las gawas. So mo na domestic work, so construction or mining or quarry, marketing, trading, and illegal activities. So mo siya kasagaran mga work sa forced labor. And in Turkmenistan, the worst part was that there was no rest. So mo tong giingon, sleep for 2 hours a night. So imagine that. So there was no going out and no day off. So no day off. Very kapwa juga yung trabaho. So what causes of forced labor? Poverty is one of the main causes of forced labor, as well as lack labor in the agriculture sectors, decent employee opportunities, discrimination. So, mao na sa about sa poverty, na yung discrimination sa employees. So, victims of forced labor, mostly the children. It's all about 2.4 million people globally are victims of forced labor. Some of them is 152 million children are in forced labor. About half in its worst forms primary hazardous work. So, what is the difference between the forced labor and slavery? Slavery is when some actually owns you like piece of property, or certitude is similar to slavery. You might live on their person, premises, work for them, and to be unable to live, but they own you. So, mao lagi na lahi gid sila kay ang slavery good kay makapapahuway pa ka, maka-ask pa kag permission to go out and gawas pa ka, pero makapahuway pa ka. Pero about sa forced labor means you are forced to do work that you have not agreed to under the threat of punishment. So imuon ka lang underon nga nila. So mao na siya ang forced labor. Thank you.
Noon, I'm going to report the debt bondage. So, to pay off a debt, so this is known as a debt bondage. They are forced to work for a little no pay, have no control over their debt. The majority, if not all, of the money they earn is used to repay their loan. The worth of their effort always exceeds the original loan amount. So, debt bondage will be the majority of the money earned is used to repay the loan. So they work to just pay for their loans. So they they have to work hard so that they can pay all their loans. The other one is example of debt bondage. A man who identifies himself as an employment agent offers her a job in the United States as a domestic employee. She arrives at San Francisco with a valid visa, but it and her passport and taken from her. She is brought to a home where her movement is restricted. She is told that she must work as a housekeeper to pay off the cost the cost of her travel for her family will or her family will be killed. So this type of debt bondage is a job failure of the abroad that a you example you will be working and then you go to abroad, then you don't have the capacity to work, then you must pay the your manager for your work, and then you will clean some houses, you will do some community service for your work abroad. So that will be my topic. Thank you. Goodbye. God bless.
Good day, I'm Cadet Delanon. So today we're going to tackle all about the three elements of human trafficking. So human trafficking is not only a crime, it is also a gross violations of human rights. A trafficker can also operate as a professional working with a small or semi-organized group or as an amateur working alone. A trafficker may be a stranger, a friend of the family, a parent, an uncle, a sister, a boyfriend, a labor contractor, a diplomat, a career criminal, or a business executive. So there are three elements of human trafficking: an act, or what is done, or that means how it is done, and last is exploitative purpose, or why it is done. So let's tackle about the act or acts of human trafficking, or what is done. So the trafficking in persons protocol specifies that it is an act of trafficking to give or to receive a payment or benefits to achieve the consent of person having control over another person. Anyone who buys a trafficked person from a trafficker in order to exploit them is also a trafficker. So a person becomes a human trafficker if he or she does any of the following acts. Number one, recruits another person for the purpose of exploitation to transports or transfers another persons, or transporting involves moving a person to another place in order to exploit them. A traffic person may travel normally and legally with passport if they crossing a border by bus, a car, an air, train, or other transportations. And last is harbors or receives another person for the purpose of exploitation. So these are the examples of an act: recruitment, receipt, enticement, harboring, obtaining, providing, transferring, or transportations of persons. So that's all. Thank you.
Human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring or receipt of people through force, fraud, or deception, with the main of exploiting them for profit. Um, it's the meaning of this is You will use someone to make profit, can gain money on that person, even though that person you're making fraud statements. Men, women, children of all ages and form backgrounds can become victims of this crime. All ages can do the victim of this. Even the child will do sex trafficking, abusing them to make a video to gain more profit of them, even though they didn't know you're making money of it, even though it is bad, which occurs in every region of the world. The traffickers often use violence, fraud, employment agencies, like what I say. They will hire you. After they will hire you, you will deploy in other country. After you deploy, you will be deported because of your documents is lacking, and make promises education and job opportunities to trick or coerce their victims. Human trafficking is used to force fraud, coin to get someone to perform labor or sex acts in exchange for money or something of value such as place to live and addictive drug. Trafficking has nothing to do with moving something or someone from one country to another. That is smuggling, which is crime against a border, or immigration law, which is a crime against people can be trafficked in their own homes. Sometimes your family uses you for them to make you money, and each time you make money, even though you didn't know that is you are a victim of human trafficking. Forced fraud or cocaine must be present for a situation to be trafficking, and a forced fraud or cocaine must be a factor that compels the person to remain in the situation. Some people is doing that because there are there are nothing else to make money. That's why they are remain in the situation even though it is human trafficking. If you hire someone and promise to pay a certain amount of percentage on that premise, that is fraud. If the person you cheated is free to leave and go, file a complaint, it is not trafficking. Though it may be exploitation. This situation only becomes trafficking when the defrauded person is, for example, treated with deportation or complaining. Deportation, it is in the US or any any other country when you are lacking a document. The immigration law will deport you. Human trafficking can happen in any business, like escort services or strip clubs. It can also happen where no businesses exist in informal scenes such as within families, like what I say, families. While human trafficking can happen to anyone, all ages, even though children or adult. Certain individuals and group of people are far vulnerable than others. People being trafficked will not always or even often identify as trafficking victims because of how trafficking works. Most people do not identify the experience as trafficking until after the situation is over. Sometimes people was being trafficked, you on traffic, they didn't know what is happening. After some situations, they will know after the situation happen on that day. Labor trafficking most often begins with a simple job offer. Will offer you and making fraud and you didn't know the that is human trafficker. It becomes trafficking when pay or working conditions are abusive and worker cannot quit, complain because the boss is treating them or exploiting their desperate economic circumstances. Kidnapping or physical force are really part of how labor trafficking situation begin.
So, good day, sir. Good day, everyone. I am Cadet Tagongdong, and my topic for today is about exploitative purpose in human trafficking, which is one of the elements. The exploitative purpose of trafficking in person is to exploit other human being for profit, which can be financial gain or material benefit. According to the law that punishes trafficking in person is refer to the recruitment, transportation, transfer, or harboring, or receipt of arson with or without the victim consent or knowledge. Within or across national borders by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, or of position. Taking advantage of the vulnerability of the persons, or the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation, which includes at a minimum the exploitation or the prostitution of others or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor or services, slavery, servitude, or the removal or sale of organs. The recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of a child for the purpose of exploitation shall also be considered as trafficking in person, even if does not involve any of the means set forth in the preceding paragraph. That's all. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. So, first, I introduce myself. I'm the Cadet Anjem Distora. So from now, I'm going to discuss the topic that given to me, the current state of the human trafficking in the Philippines. But first, the Philippine law enforcement reported that the identifying 1,443 victims of the trafficking. The vast majority of the home were six of the trafficking victims conferred with 2,953 victims in 2018. The IACAT Sea Air Task Force identifying the 2,500 potential trafficking victims through operation of the day for departures, 820 in 2018. From the Philippines of human trafficking, Tier 1, as the 2020, the Philippines is ranked as Tier 1 in the trafficking in person report of the United States State Department of the substantial effort. The Philippines government completely complies with the minimal condition of the abolition of the human trafficking. During the reporting year, the government continued with the make serious and the persistent effort, so the Philippines remains on the Tier 1. Improved coordination of the service for returning Filipino migrant workers who were victims of the trafficking. Overseas convicting the punishing traffickers, including the government officials, conflict in sex trafficking in the labor traffickers, with increasing assistant and service assistant who provide the testimony, and increasing the use of the prosecution procedures. To reduce the potential of the further harm of trafficking victims were among the initiative. Although the government meets the minimum requirements, it has to conduct through investigation. The prosecution of official suspect of being involved in the human trafficking was not consistently prosecuted. Fraudulent recruiters in the other labors traffickers and does not increase support of the victim in the human trafficking. So that's all po, sir. Thank you.
Prioritize the recommendations. Increase the number of investigation, prosecutions, and convictions of officials and labor traffickers who are complicit. Build local government units capacity to provide reintegration services for trafficking survivors, including as trauma, informed care, job training, and in-country employment. Create and implement a mechanism to guarantee that a diverse community of survivors is included in the design, implementation, monitoring, and assessment of anti-trafficking policies and initiatives. Increase funding for government and non-profit programs that give specialized treatment to children who have been the victims of online sexual exploitation. Increase the resources available to anti-trafficking task forces so that they can conduct timely investigations, coordinated operation, and prosecutions, while also providing comprehensive victim and witness aid. Step up efforts to identify and aid victims of child labor trafficking. Increase the number of resources available to law enforcement units tasked with investigating online crimes.